In celebration of 100 episodes of Satansplain, I have a discussion with the Church of Satan's very own High Priest, Magus Peter H. Gilmore. We share our thoughts on a variety of topics, including satanic ritual, supernatural versus supernormal, Anton LaVey's atheism, meetings between Church of Satan members, and the applications of artificial intelligence, from music composition to satanic self-improvement.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Welcoming my guest for episode number 100 of Satansplain, the High Priest himself, Magus Peter H. Gilmore. Welcome to Satansplain.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill. I've been a great fan of your show since you began it, because you really do such an excellent job detailing various aspects of Satanism in a nuanced fashion that is rational, succinct, and always on point.
Wow. How do I respond to that? Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess now that the bar's been set, I have to make sure you don't look like a liar and get my crap together and go on with the questions. Okay. The thing I was going to say is, I joined the Church of Satan a few years before you became the High Priest, and I was an atheist when I joined. I'm still an atheist now, but I've run into some people here and there, usually with not very good typing skills, who claim you yourself somehow changed the Church of Satan's belief system from deist to atheist, as if somehow the cosmic answer to whether the universe had a creator was some defining part of Satanism in the first place. And it's funny, I never got that memo.
Yeah, well, talking to Anton LaVey himself about the issue is that when he first started the Church of Satan, the idea of calling yourself an atheist was rather frowned upon. So he decided, when calling himself a Satanist, that was even much more daring and more outrageous, but that he didn't have to play with an atheism discussion. And he could think about keeping an open mind for what aspects of the universe we don't yet understand. Like, how do things actually function? And to me, always said that he was essentially at heart and at base an atheist. He did not believe in anything supernatural. And if you're going to believe in a deity of some sort, you have to believe in something that's supernatural. For him, there would be aspects of reality that were supernormal. And that meant things that are there, but that you don't run into on a regular basis. That here in our little Earth ball, in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, in the universe, there may be things that we will never encounter, we'll never see. We may not be able to plumb the depths of the complexity of what exists. So he didn't want to just say, like a lot of scientific materialist people would say, it's this and only this. He wanted to keep an open mind for additional data always, but he didn't feel that there would ever be data that was going to lead to changing his mind to actually thinking there was some kind of deity. But he also felt that the idea was that the things that we call paranormal or psychic, and what he would again put in the supernormal realm, that things about your mind having a reach just beyond your skull, that could be something that was being explored by Professor Rhine back in the 20s and 30s, and other people since then, with most of whom didn't even have the ability to duplicate Rhine's experiments. His stuff is pretty unique when you look at what he achieved with questioning people and testing them out. But I mean, later you have somebody like Ingo Swann, who was in the remote viewing program that our government was running. And he put out a book called Natural ESP, which is basically there to teach you how to try to awaken ESP talents if you have them. Because like musical or mathematical abilities, his idea was that it's not something everyone can do, but it's something that one might be able to sensitize oneself to at least see if you might have that ability. And his book has all these kind of interesting concepts for doing remote viewing experiments, where somebody in the same house or in a house nearby or in a place far away, somebody would draw something, and the person who was the receiver would then, make themselves sensitive and try to recreate what they were doing. And Swan had some really interesting results. And we did some of those experiments a long time ago, and we had some interesting results too. That you draw things that were either conceptually or visually linked to what somebody else had drawn. So the idea was, are you just receiving a visual or are you receiving a concept? And it's just stuff that needs a lot more research. But we were looking at things now where people are looking at how flocks and schools of fish work, and how they can move as if like one mind is controlling them. And it seems to be something that needs to be investigated. You even go back to very primitive concepts. Some of the ideas, the mind wasn't just limited to being in your head, that it had a reach somewhere, but not that everyone had the ability to do it. Like they would consider people like saintly or demonic if they could do those things at various points in past history. But for Doctor, it was always the idea of these supernormal things that led to other possibilities for how his ritual magic might work. Because there was always the lesser magic, which is just direct manipulation. And that's, being a carny, being someone who can do cold readings, somebody who understands human psychology and is observant of human behavior and has some kind of empathetic and sympathetic abilities to pick up from the people that you're encountering so that you can turn them to either a direction that you want or keep them out of your way if you want. Like he was very concerned with those ideas. But then he was also concerned with, at that time, all of the research that was going on for the psychic and paranormal fields. And he read about them. I mean, he put some books on his list that kind of deal with that. And we talked about things because there was experiments going on in the Soviet Union and going on here in the United States, because there was the thought that this could all be put to military use. And apparently Ingo Swann really had some amazing success that he could... supposedly, I mean, this was the claims that he could read files in a room that was thousands of miles away. You wouldn't have to open the drawer. It wouldn't even have to be somebody else looking. Somehow he could see those. And fascinating. And the latest book that's come out about UFOs, I can't think of the guy's name now. It's was the fellow who was head of one of the agencies who then came out and talked about it. He worked with Ingo Swann too, and sort of regaled us with some of Swann's remarkable abilities. Even Ingo wouldn't talk about, because he kind of thought, well, no one's going to believe this. So, but that's the whole thing with thinking about Satanism and Anton LaVey. Another thing that I found interesting that I've been researching lately is the influence of William B. Seabrook on Anton LaVey. And now Seabrook, his book, Witchcraft and Its Power in the World Today, is on the reading list. The book came out in 1940. I hadn't read it. It's not easy to find because most of Seabrook's works are out of print at this point. He's kind of ignored wholesale pretty much. So I actually went and got a first edition copy and sat down to read it on my front porch, and then realized that in the introduction that Seabrook writes, he presents the entire theory that Anton LaVey adopted for how he saw magic functioning. That it's essentially psychological, but that if there was supernormal aspects that were somehow psyches being able to reach one another, that would aid and abet one's ability to do ritual magic and project emotionally. Because Seabrook felt different from Rhine, who felt you could do it in a controlled lab circumstance, that those are very cold and clinical, and the results are limited. Seabrook felt that they actually came from an emotional basis, and therefore he tried that, and his most prolific pursuit was using BDSM and sensory deprivation to explore those aspects. And he too had some intriguing results now and again, although far less frequently than he would have liked. And he just also enjoyed it for erotic purposes as well.
Yeah, there seems to be this overall false dichotomy I see where the mystics are saying, well, this thing was experienced, therefore it's objectively true because of this. And then on the other extreme, you have the atheists of the more, let's say, Reddit atheists, hardcore atheists who seem to think like, oh, like you have a coffee mug with your astrological sign on it. Well, you're stupid then. And as a Satanist, let alone as an atheist, I just don't see the shame in saying, yeah, this is some fascinating sounding stuff, and or this is a good novelty, using the coffee mug example. I don't know. Maybe many atheists seem hung up on this fear of slipping into mysticism. I don't know what it is.
I tend to think you're right with that, Bill, that there's a cowardice there to think that the universe could be broader than they currently understand it to be. I think that's what scares them, that it doesn't mean that there's going to be a God showing up anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to keep your mind open to see how exactly things do function. Because as physics keeps advancing and we keep finding out much more interesting things about connections between
Mm-hmm.
particles and such, are on the verge of discovering the alchemical ether. So things that were mysticism at one point actually might have just been thought experiments that we might find are actually part of existence. But again, it doesn't say that there's a deity there, that anyone designed it or made it. So the universe is vastly more complex than we'll probably ever understand fully it to be. So, you have to be relaxed enough and also to have fun. I mean, the whole astrology thing is fun because
Mm-hmm.
people tend to read that and it constructs how they behave. If
Yeah.
they see that there's some particular sign and the characteristics of the sign are
Yeah.
this, the positives and the negatives, they adopt them or
It-
castigate themselves for
yeah.
having them, use them excuses like, well, I do that because I'm a Taurus, rah, 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 kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's
Well,
like,
there's definitely an ego appeal of like, oh, look, there were all these wonderful adjectives that supposedly describe me because I was born on this part of the month.
and that the stars had something to do with
Yeah.
you. That's like, it's elevating you because you're not just a random happenstance.
Yeah.
Of course, the thing is that we are all random happenstances, but that makes us utterly unique for the most part. So you should just enjoy that part of the whole way of looking at it. Have that perspective.
I've been a magister for a number of years, and I was told by these people, usually in aluminum hats, that when you get to these high ranks in satanic organizations, you're told to turn around and believe in and worship a literal Satan. And I've been a magister for years, and I just still have not been told that. It's the strangest thing.
Yeah. Isn't that an odd thing? Yeah, and I've been a magister for a long time.
Yeah, even longer.
And being put there by Anton LaVey himself, and he never brought any of that stuff up.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I think there are some people who really, really want Satanism to be devil worship. They really want there to be a devil that they could have care about them. It's the people who pray to God thinking that God's going to do something, or Jesus is going to intercede, or Mary will take pity on them, or Thor, or Freya, or, Izanami and Izanagi, like whatever deity you want to run to, that they really feel that they could get something that's much bigger than them looking over them and somehow guiding their lives. For me, I see it as an ego weakness with a lot of people, that they can't really take charge of themselves and feel happy in being command of their own lives. I think often it's because there are aspects that they're out of control for them that cause things that are unfortunate for them or unhappy. And they want to have somebody to blame. They'll ask for help. They think that God runs things, but then, of course, when bad things happen, like, it's always like when the church is burned down, like, well, where was your God then? Like, what were you doing wrong that your God let your church burn down? Or all those kids at the Christian camps in Texas that were washed away in the floods.
Yeah. They'll
This
play
is
the
just
mental
such
gymnastics game from there.
Yeah, it is. It's all kinds of kooky gymnastics. That desire that there's something supernatural and more for people. It's sad, I think, that they can't just accept something that's rational for what it is. That Anton LaVey wanted a rational philosophy as based on the understanding of human psychology and human nature, and using symbolism that's exciting. Because of course, like, people are attracted to Satan, the adversary, and wanting to, as we do, we feel Satan's a great symbol for us. It's something that's, as you've said, our mascot, and it's perfect to have that as a sort of guiding principle of we are our own gods, and we can be the adversaries of people who would stand against us, who would want to oppose us in whatever way they would try to do that, either as physically or economically or in whatever sense possible, to censor us, to in some way infringe on our liberty, that we relish being adversarial, that we are not passive. And I think that sense of going beyond passivity in Satanism to taking an active position of shaping your own destiny is a challenge that I think frightens many people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also just the inability to follow the logic of their own claims with the idea of, okay, we're going to tell all the devil worshippers who come to us, no, go away. That's not what we're about. But then only when we find the highest ranking members who are the most deepest in their conviction about this atheist philosophy, then we tell them to believe the opposite. Like, how is that going to go?
Well, I think one of the major people who went in that direction was Michael Aquino. He became a theist. If you read his books and his works, he basically says the first time he did a satanic ritual, he felt there was a presence in the ritual chamber because he lit the candles and set up a crudely drawn Baphomet.
Mm-hmm.
And he had sort of an emotional frisson there. And that convinced him that there was something additional there. And he felt that because Dr. LaVey would often make, metaphorical fun references to the man downstairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He always had fun with it because Anton LaVey was a fun guy.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great sense of humor. And he wasn't sitting there parsing every little thing out saying, I can't say this because somebody will think that, or, I'm going to have fun with that.
Had fun with the hyperbole. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely hyperbole. Yeah. And then also the concept of ritual as a heightened emotional experience. He was very critical of past magical orders who created very tepid rituals. They would just be really tedious and boring. So he decided, well, I'm going to just take the goat by the balls and make it just totally flat out, like blasphemous to the fullest extent he could think, mm-hmm. in a way of creating a totally dramatic sensibility. So when you light those candles, and you say those words, you get deeply stimulated. And tying it again back to Seabrook, the idea that if you actually are going to do something more than just purging your emotions, which is essentially mm-hmm. accepted, it's like, there you go. It's a cathartic experience. But if there's a possibility of there being something more, then it's going to come through emotional rather than intellectual release. And that's why he called it an intellectual decompression chamber, mm-hmm. meaning that you're getting away from intellectualizing when you're ritualizing. That you really have to just go full out with the deepest emotions possible, that you achieve the best catharsis possible. And if there's any chance of anything actually happening, you put out what you can to make that influence in the universe. Whether it works or not, that's up to you to decide.
Yeah. I run into so many newcomers to Satanism who don't really grasp that concept. They kind of miss the boat on that. And I think a lot of it does come back to the kind of atheist dichotomy of thinking, well, I have to reject all this other stuff. If it's ritual, it's therefore mystic. And of course, that's not the case at all in Satanism. No. And the reasons for ritual are very well detailed in the Satanic Bible. I know we say ritual is not a requirement, but I see too many people, in my opinion, using that as an excuse to dismiss like the whole second half of the Satanic Bible, which I think is wrong. And furthermore, I really do think there is something to be said about formalized ritual. My personal belief is that when you have physical altar tools and set that up, there's something just psychologically that goes on through that physical interaction that you can't necessarily get from just trying to do things completely in your head.
I agree completely on that. Yeah, no, it totally. That's why it's sort of in the Satanic scriptures put out some additional stuff where I'd even consecrate your tools, mm-hmm. Because the idea is to give things can have a significance. We human beings, ritual seems to be very natural to us. That's why, hey, we sing happy birthday and light candles, simple things, or, do a national anthem or play particular music, Auld Lang Syne on New Year's Eve and blow horns and have confetti. I mean, there's all kinds of rituals that humans indulge in. It's very natural to our species. I don't think there's any culture that doesn't have rituals of one sort or another. Mm-hmm. So having that, because we're creatures of conceptual consciousness, and are being that, it means we assign values or weight to things around us so that we can then see how to relate to them, whether it's something as simple as, is this a food stuff? is this something I can use for clothing or for building shelter, to cultural artifacts that could cue your mind to thinking about different values you might have about something. I mean, when we think about the symbol of Satan, the value of Satan to us is the adversary who inspires us to be rebellious against whatever the herd is doing, not just automatic gainsaying. It's you might know I'm here for an argument, not just contradiction. It's like we're there because we want to be able to guide ourselves and to see our position. But it's a way we hierarchize everything around us. We're very hierarchical in our thinking. And also our minds work in such a way that we organize things to try to have meaning to it. Like as we look at clouds, we see things in the clouds. We look at Rorschach blots.
Yeah.
We see things in those. It's just how our minds function. So the idea of having symbols that have some weight to them is natural to human beings. For people who want to think that it's not natural for them, I think they're mistaken. I think that, as you're saying, you would encourage them to try a formal ritual to see what kind of effect it has on them. As we saw with Michael Aquino, it pushed him over the deep end and turned him into a theist. But for most of us, I think that setting up a ritual space and having ritual tools, objects that you dedicate just for this purpose, it gives them a sense of preciousness and meaning that energizes you. It's not just, well, here's a cup and here's a knife. It's like suddenly, no, this is my chalice that I'm going to have the elixir of life in, and whatever wonderful beverage you're going to put in there. And here's my wand or my sword or my ritual bell. For me as a musician, and you're as a musician too, it's like I like things musically that sound good. One of the great things was like 5 years ago receiving the grand gong as a gift from the membership.
Oh yes.
Which to me, that the sound of that 40-inch tam-tam, it's really quite something. And I have several others now too, so I enjoy playing them just for my own sort of sound experience. And some people like to sit and listen, and I can create soundscapes for them. I have other objects too. I have a minal wave drum, and we use a rather large, what they call a rin gong, which looks like a singing bowl, but it's actually a Nepalese Buddhist thing that's made of metal, and that you hit it on the side, and it has a deep, what they would call the sound of mindfulness. But if you watch Realm of Satan, that's the bell that's ringing. Like it's the big rin gong that you keep hearing ringing when you're approaching our house in that scene. So, but yeah, I agree with you that people should really try ritual out. I think for some folks, investing in the tools might be a challenge. So if they have friends that have them and have a chamber and they're close to them, then experiencing ritual with at least one of the person who might already have the paraphernalia,
that's how I started.
makes it special. And also at that point, then you might want to say, okay, maybe I'll start just by getting a robe. And, because special clothing, of course, is something that people wear. It's like uniforms or pajamas or dressing up in a tuxedo for someplace. Like clothing is hugely important for how we see ourselves and want to present ourselves. It's about identity and projection simultaneously. So having ritual gear is quite important for folks. Like some people do rituals in the nude, and that's a whole other thing. If that makes you feel free, that's totally an option for people. But for us, it's generally speaking, robed participants, a naked altar to represent the flesh, rather than just the sterility you see in most theistic spiritual religions that don't care about or denying or attacking carnality. I think Doctor created such a powerful metaphor there. I mean, here we are. It's about to be 60 years. And I think it works for all of us. And we don't expect that it's going to work for other people. Tattoo is the other thing, is that most religious people really feel that they want other folks to believe as they do and think that their way is the only right one. And our feeling is we don't really care. Believe whatever you want. Whatever
We're not
works
for everybody.
and as long as you're not trying to force you on me, especially through legislation, then go do you. We don't really care.
Yeah, it's like, what do I have to gain by converting you to Satanism? Some random Christian. Like, would I really want you in my ranks? I don't know.
No, most of them you probably wouldn't. But also, I think for them, their idea is that the more people that they absorb, like the Borg, makes them feel more convinced that they're correct.
Yeah.
And they feel that they have to be correct. And because basically we're atheists, we just know that all the God stuff is nonsense. So we don't care which flavor of it you have. It's you do it. But as long as you're not torturing me and telling me I have to believe in it, I don't really care. Like, go pray somewhere, go put some idol up someplace, whatever it is that you're happy with. Just don't make me have to pay obeisance to it or do it myself.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
The Millionaire Satanist by Reverend Robert Ing is not a book of comfort. It is a weapon, a scalpel for cutting through the noise of manipulation, cultural sedation, and emotional coercion that parade as wisdom in the modern age. Inside, you will not find hollow affirmations, romanticized martyrdom, or the soft language of passive survival. What you will find is a raw, reasoned guide to preserving your sovereignty, mentally, emotionally, strategically. You'll learn why your survival must come before sentiment, how to exploit societal systems without breaking their rules, and how to recognize the labels others stick on you before you become trapped inside their expectations. This book isn't about being liked. It's about being lucid. It's about surviving with your identity intact, be it in the boardroom, in your personal life, or in a collapsing cultural landscape that rewards performance over authenticity. You've been made to feel guilty for putting yourself first. That ends here. Read it if you're done being used. Keep it if you're ready to think clearly. Apply it if you're ready to win. The Millionaire Satanist by Reverend Robert Ing, along with companion piece, The Millionaire Satanist, The Chaos Planner, can be yours today. Available at Amazon.com. Get yours while you still can.
Handmade, all-natural, botanical perfumes, soaps, and ceremonial incense, sculptures and jewelry to adorn yourself and your other altars. All this and more await you at moonandsunemporium.com. Ritual perfumes and other occult fine art luxuries, created and curated by me, Priestess Sarah Josephine Clark, with tarot readings by Reverend Dr. Dylan Clark. moonandsunemporium.com.
The Neutral Wisdom Podcast is a podcast dedicated to passing on knowledge and wisdom from a satanic perspective. Hosted by Satanist Robert Shirley, author of Neutral Wisdom, Contemplations of a Satanic Warlock. Join us as we challenge conventional wisdom and offer refreshing insights for those seeking deeper understanding and self-empowerment through a modern philosophy. Embrace your own authenticity and transformative potential. Join us wherever you get your podcasts or at neutralwisdom.ca. Ever forward.
Magister Bill M here with Satansplain. Visit the main website for the show at satansplain.com. There you can find every single Satansplain episode. You can also listen to Satansplain on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, and a host of other places. If you're on social media, please give Satansplain a like and a follow, or whatever the equivalent is, on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Likewise, if you're listening now on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button for this episode. For all questions and correspondence, email me directly. The email address is bill@satansplain.com. And if you enjoy Satansplain and would like to support the show, please go to the show's page on Locals. Point your web browsers to satansplain.locals.com. You can sign up for Locals for free, but you can also additionally become a paid subscriber there. That is the best way you can support Satansplain. Though we also have a merch store, you can go to store.satansplain.com for that. And thank you, as always, to all of you who support Satansplain in one way or another. And now, back to our discussion with Magus Peter H. Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan. I know that Satanists by their nature tend to be misanthropic or loners or introverted or what have you, and I understand all that. And I know there's no requirement in the Church of Satan to socialize with other members, but I personally do strongly encourage Satanists to meet up with fellow Satanists in person, not necessarily regularly, but at least make that leap from 0 to 1 gatherings in your life. Yeah, we talk to each other on social media, but I think there's something to be said about meeting in person, let alone meeting for group ritual. I
Yeah.
also tell my listeners, don't die a group ritual virgin. And some of us do get together for group rituals or for other social activities, but it seems many don't. And I don't know if a lot of this is kind of due to people in general these days, Satanists or not, rarely doing things outside of their phone or
Well,
not
I
as
think
much.
just so many people are just locked into the social media only way of dealing with their lives at this point. That's why they have trouble dating. The swipe right, swipe left kind of thinking is
Mhm.
about it's just sort of stop people from finding ways of actually having contact and finding something beyond whatever sort of facades people are presenting via electronic media, because those are all facades. And I think that what we know from our personal experience, especially because neither you or I are particularly young ones anymore, like we know that there's a great deal of value in meeting people and that you can pick up so much more from being in the physical proximity and discussing folks with folks, and you can get into so many nuances, but you can
Mhm.
also read reactions, and then you find people that you have enough in common with beyond just calling yourself a Satanist, that you want to hang out for some reason. Like, I mean, I have a huge movie collection here, and I
Mhm.
like to invite people over and screen movies for them. Often things that they haven't seen, because my collection is always growing.
Mhm.
I have a lot of obscure films. So I'm like, hey, have you seen this? No? Okay, I'll make the popcorn. Come on over. We're going to, get 4 or 5 people to come and just watch a movie. And I'll sort of often give an introduction to why I think it has some value, and then we watch it, and then we talk about it afterwards. We have drinks, we have snacks. It's a great way to just break the ice and spend some time and share ideas with people. And some people watch the movie and really hate it, and other people might really enjoy it, and other people might find it's like, eh. But it's really neat, I think, to kind of explore things like that. And I know other friends who meet folks just to do things like take walks or hikes together,
Mhm.
or they meet to go to museums together because they have an interest in history or art history. And the idea of taking somebody with you to experience something beyond just your regular day-to-day life is a great way of making a human connection.
Yeah.
And I think that humans are creatures that are not singular.
Yeah.
Like, we're raised in families. We sort of live in whatever tribal kind of situations that we have, whether it be, a village or a town or a city or a state or a nation. I mean, there's so many hierarchies and ways that humans are interacting. So to kind of avoid meeting other Satanists seems just sort of like, just take the plunge,
Yeah.
do it. But the problem is you might meet an asshole. They might think you're an asshole, like you might be the asshole in the mix. So yeah, there's always a risk. And I
Yeah.
think people are afraid of risk taking these
Mm.
days, very much so. I think in earlier times when people would meet at bars or club activities, because
Mhm.
clubs were much more common in the past, regardless of whatever they were about, whether they were a cooking club or a knitting club or some kind of or a mathematics club. These kind of things are ways that people could, again, interact in a human manner and then find out, gee, is there something that we have in common more than just whatever the basic topic of the club is? And then you make connections, and those are stimulating and enriching. I think today people have a problem that they think every connection has to last forever, that
Mhm.
it's all going to be a commitment, and that's kind of overthinking things.
Mhm.
That I think in the past people were much more relaxed about getting to know folks, thinking that it's casual, we like each other, will turn into a friendship, could turn to something more. Uh, and how long would that last? However deep it gets, is that finite? Which for most people, it's very brief. My wife and I have been married for decades, and I know very few younger people that even come close to that. They think that they have to have the perfect soulmate, and if they find some flaw in one another, they immediately like, abandon whatever they were building. And it's sort of, well, you know, you might have given it more of a chance.
Yeah.
I think that's the culture we're in now, though, that people expect this perfection. They think that things on some level must be this idealized thing that is going to be forever or for a long time. And it should be much more casual in that sense and much more exploratory, because unless you explore, you're missing things that you could find enriching and enjoyable.
Mhm. I've run into a lot of Satanists who say, well, I hate people or I hate crowds, but I think they don't realize that if you're going to be in a gathering with other Satanists, with just other Satanists in the room, that's going to be a lot different than just being around people casually and stuff like that. I mean, if you are that much of, I guess, isolationist, for lack of a better term, just think of how thrilling it can be to be in a room with other people who get it.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. I think that a lot of times people do have that kind of desire to be a hermit because they feel that the folks around them don't understand them, wouldn't want to understand them, would be hostile towards them. And if you're in a room with one or two or three or many other Satanists, you'll know at least you have some common ground to begin discussions. And you've read certain books that you have a shared admiration for. And the ice is broken there. You don't have to worry or be afraid from that. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to like them, but there's always the chance that something could be an interesting spark. And also, if it doesn't really work for you, if you try it once or twice or three times, and each time you find the people that you're interacting with to be duds on some level or just not fulfilling, then, go back to being a hermit. There's nothing that's going to stop you from doing that. But it's always worth being brave and taking the chance. Again, be bold. There's magic in that. And so let's be bold.
More on the question of Satanists interacting with people. You've written lots of great essays on this: Myth of the Satanic Community, Island of the Disgruntled, especially Rebels Without Cause. And we also saw LaVey's essays like Get a Life and Lot Lice. And I tried sharing some kind of similar thoughts at the 50th celebrations, and then later in a Satansplain episode, Spotlights, Dim Bulbs, and Shine, I called my talk.
A very good one.
Oh, well, thank you. Do you think, unfortunately, it's just the nature of Satanism with its atheism and so on that it will attract occasionally the narcissist, say, who thinks he gets it but doesn't? I mean, the 9 sins, I think, indicate where those people are kind of missing the boat.
Yeah. I mean, that's why Doctor wrote those, because I think Satanism seems to be like hey, come on into like toxic narcissists, because they can celebrate themselves, but then they don't realize that you have to be able to also associate with other human beings now and again, and that they're not here just to be your fodder. The idea of having some respect for other people, which is, of course, earned, it doesn't happen unless you give somebody a chance to earn it. And that goes for each of these people themselves. You're your own God, but you're not their God. And you might be able to be their friend, but don't set yourself up immediately as an adversary, because our silver rule is do unto others as they do unto you. So you start off diplomatically and see if there's something beneficial that can be gotten out of negotiations, whatever kind of negotiations they are, socially and beyond. But we do get narcissists, and we do get people in Satanism who suddenly think that their opinions on everything are the satanic way it must be. And as I said before, the concept is you're your God, but you're not every other Satanist's God. And I think that goes over the head with some people, that they really, even people who like try to write essays and such, that they come up with this concept of, to be a Satanist, you must do this like this. And only a Satanist would be this way, and or would vote this way, or would eat this kind of food, or would evaluate this music this way.
Then they're shocked and outraged when they run across a fellow Church of Satan member or just Satanist who has the exact opposite view, politically or whatever, and they just can't wrap their head around it.
Well, and then there'll be people who leave our organization even because they will encounter other members who they find reprehensible because they have values that are different from theirs, even though their basic Satanism is all congruent. Satanism doesn't necessitate every aspect of your life being the same as somebody else's. And when those who get it, understand the essential radical individualism of Satanism. That's its greatest strength. And that you're going to constantly meet people who have different tastes and different takes. They have different lives. They came from different backgrounds. They have different educations. They have different abilities. They have different languages. They have different skills. And this doesn't mean that everybody's going to mesh, and that you can't expect everybody's going to want to apply the same things, millions of variables essentially in one's life that are going to, you have to all do it the same way. Like theological religions often, theists try to say, well, you have to have these rules for, your morality and your behavior and all these kind of things. And the beauty of Satanism is that we don't have that. We encourage everybody to, like, you do you, but that doesn't mean that I want to do you. It's, you really have to understand that part.
Yeah. And I've run across Satanists who said things that I just found completely ridiculous, and it wasn't because they were less Satanist than me. It was just one of these things where I just had radical disagreements on their approach to this thing or another. And what I would do is that usually inspired me to go make a Satansplain episode on my view of it, or write an essay with my view of it without naming any names or anything. And I just think that's an option. And I see some disgruntled people who don't seem to realize this, that you can actually explain what your views are and how you relate that with Satanism without throwing the people who disagree under the bus.
Yeah, well, it's tough for people. And for all the years Peggy and I have been involved with this organization, that's definitely been an undercurrent for some folks. Before social media evolved, people were actually not encountering people that they could butt heads with as frequently as they could once social media happened. So if you actually made the effort to go see somebody, it usually was something that would be in person. You'd correspond with letters, but you'd suss people out in a way that you'd find some common ground beforehand. But when you deal with everybody in an open forum where anybody, like where we have our private Church of Satan, members only places, just because you're a member of the Church of Satan doesn't mean you're going to agree on anything beyond the basics of Satanism. Because I've said again and again that Satanism is a foundation, but we all build very different structures on top of that. And some of us build structures that can relate to one another and others don't. And leaving the organization, which is really has a lot of people in it and has over the years, because you encounter like a handful of people online who have a different take on things than you, it's just really kind of, again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Just because you haven't met the people who share your ideas on certain topics doesn't mean they're not there. They may not just be interacting in the same forums that you are, but throwing Satanism away as it's something that doesn't function for you for something like politics or whatever, things like that. That tends to be, of course, at this point in our history, that's the most divisive topic right now. And everybody's got to find the way that the political situation will benefit them best and they'll feel most comfortable with. And people can find radically different solutions. And often it depends on their own backgrounds, what they've come up with, who they're working with, what they're on, what their professions might be, what their family structure is, whether they're embedded in it, whether there's family businesses or family traditions that you could still be a Satanist, but want to be exploring those. Like, you're going to be the next Earl of something or other, or there's a business that you're going to finally have to help run that's been in the family for decades. There's just different things that may be important to you that your Satanism can help you do better, but it doesn't mean that other people are going to be doing something similar or even agreeing with what it is that you're doing.
And it seems also from what we've read in Church of Satan history, it's kind of been that way since day one, that they would have these gatherings with people from all sorts of walks of life sitting side by side in this thing.
Yeah. And again, I think we've continued that. Whenever we've gotten people together, one of the reasons Peggy came up with the idea of doing the salon presentations, which we did for the two different parts of the 50th anniversary celebration, was to show how many different kinds of applications our members took to satisfy themselves and to live vitally, because they all live vitally, but in radically different ways. And so I think some people came and were really surprised to see, like, wow, this person does this or that, or I think we wanted to open people's minds because being the ones running it, we see all of this. It's a big landscape for us. And then we discussed this with Anton LaVey before he passed away. He kind of brought Peggy and I to help run the organization because we shared that perspective with him. And he talked about that very specifically. He said there were other people who might be out there getting attention, helping represent the organization, but they were the kind of people who would really try to push the organization in a way that just reflects themselves. And he said that between Peggy Blanche and I, we're the ones who understood the diversity that could be built on top of the foundation of Satanism, and that we are not the people who are going to suddenly say, well, all the rest of you have to go, because you're not doing exactly what I like and how I approach this. And that's why we're where we are. We were about the only ones who he felt were in a position to do that at the time. And, I think we've kept the ship trim and sailing nicely since then. We've kept those concepts in play.
We certainly have.
And thank you. And I think when we have had our gatherings, it really kind of emphasizes that it's not some kind of weird lockstep thing where everybody's going off in one particular, like, yes, we do this. That's what Satanism is. and the folks who want to sort of put it into those kind of, freeze it into these kind of molds, they tend to be people who will fall by the wayside over time. Because they can't deal with the fact that it is such a diverse organization. And, so if the door opens, you can step right out of it if you want. Like, that's always been the great thing about the Church of Satan, is that you're not stuck in it. If you become dissatisfied with aspects of the Church of Satan, which we would generally tell people is like, maybe you don't know enough about what's going on and how many different kind of people are. Like, don't just abandon ship before you've actually gone into the hold and looked around a little. I think some people just sit in a deck chair and then decide, there's not enough people sitting near me that I want to share drinks with. I'm out of here. And it's kind of like, it's a big ship. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Another thing with people who claim, oh, the Church of Satan is not like this anymore. Well, maybe it's a you thing and not a Church of Satan thing. Like, you see people say, well, it's not as fun as it used to be 20 years ago. I was like, well, maybe you're not as fun as you used to be 20 years ago. Or you know, how are you approaching people? Are you being friendly at all? Do you put out anything that would make other members interested in what you're doing and talk to you? Or, And
I think the people who say the fun thing are people who want the Church of Satan to entertain them. Yeah, they're there because it's like, well, what are you going to do for me? Like, where are the orgies? Where are the the feasts? And it's kind of like, well, have you thrown any? Like, have you invited us over to the banquet? Have you done even a weenie roast? Like, oh, the Church of Satan isn't doing enough. And it's like, well, what do you think we're supposed to be doing? Like, we're not a political organization. We are not activists. We are all independent creators. And you don't even have to be a creator to be in the Church of Satan. As you can just be somebody who enjoys and appreciates what other people do, or not. It's so wide open. Again, I think people have these expectations about what they think we expect from them. And what I always tell people is just be you. When people come to me with those questions, I say, just explore yourself. Be brave enough to honestly explore yourself, but do that. And if you make decisions that keep you in some way isolated from other people, it's like, fine, that's your choice. Do you want to write? Do you not want to write? Whatever it is that you want to do or not do. Anton LaVey would write at times in sort of semi tongue-in-cheek about exercising by staying in bed. Keeping away from people and having some peace of mind to just read things that you want to read or listen to things that you want to listen to and not be involved with other people and not feel that you have to go out and create the next great novel or symphony or something, or even restore that car that's been sitting in your garage for all those years. You don't have to if you don't really want to. The point is always to explore what those real desires are, what your real wants are. And if you don't explore them, you're just not exploring yourself. And I think each person's own self is kind of a deep territory to look into, and they should do that. That's really kind of self-reflection is, I think, a pretty basic aspect of being a Satanist, because you wouldn't choose Satanism unless you've done some of that in the first place. So to make the decision to see yourself reflected in the mirror of Satanism, that's pretty damn crucial, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, onto a more topical thing. I want to talk a little bit about AI, since that's all the rage these days. And that relates, of course, to pentagonal revisionism. And we do have some members of the Church of Satan who have been working in the AI industry, myself included. I think AI tools are great. My overall assessment is they're great, but they're only as good as the questions you ask them. And I guess we can ask the general question, what do you see in the future of AI, especially for Satanists?
Well, we're always creating tools. Humans are tool making species. There are some others that are doing that, but not to the extent that we do that we know of anywhere. And it's just simply the latest thing to evolve out of technology as a capacity to enhance things that we can think about and produce and do. It's sort of some way started being crude, but it's kind of grown in leaps and bounds in its capabilities in an extraordinary way. And when I think back, like I'm a musician, I'm a composer, and I performed. But when I think about people originally using technology to create music, like doing synthesizer tracks and layering them, being able to edit them, being able to play things that you can't play or fix them through the technology that you have, which is gotten so much more sophisticated over time. But there would be people in those points would look at that stuff and go, well, that's bogus, or that this isn't creative because you use this tool. But it's like, well, if you can't play organ music without the organ, and that's a pretty complicated tool. And learning how to really play the violin well or the French horn, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort and a lot of mastery. So tools are always there for us to use for expression. And I think the potential there is huge for what could be done in the future with them. But I mean, even for now, there's some impressive things. Like if you're a visual artist, if you know how to keep persistent and ask the right questions and keep having the AI hit your concepts again and refining them, you can really sharpen things up. And in doing that, the time you spend asking the questions is like what you'd be doing in the past to like learn your drawing technique. Like, can I do the shading? Do I understand perspective? Do I understand lighting? How can I capture that? Can I use charcoal? Can I use watercolor? Can I use oil paint, tempera? Now it's a different kind of way of developing technique by learning how to ask questions, looking very carefully at the results and trying to guide the AI towards sharpening the results to what you're really, because you have to have the vision. It's not coming up with a vision and the idea. You come to it with a vision and you try to guide it to realizing what you're doing. You know, like an architect designs a bridge. Well, the architect doesn't build the bridge by himself. He's got equipment and people that he guides and he questions, and some things have to be adapted in the process because of where you're building it and how it's being built. And maybe you find that the structural materials aren't everything you thought they're going to be. There's always adaptation based on the tools you're using and the goals you're trying to reach. So I don't see that this is any different. I think that it requires the same kind of diligence that we've used in things that are non-electronic. I mean, I do electronic music. When I was young, that was considered like some kind of almost a cheat to be using synthesizers instead of instruments. And the sounds are very different. And especially in the beginning, like I've used some of the patch bay kind of synthesizers. You had to work your ass off to get things to sound good. And it took a lot of thought and design and working with it and trial and error and experimentation to kind of come up with the timbres and how they'd play through time, whether you're going to trigger them with like a sort of keyboard kind of thing, or whether you're going to set something else, something that would evolve over time based on, you could just keep patching things and it would change. It was a lot to work with. And you had to like the timbres that you got because they were very different from regular instrumental music. And of course, over time, somebody like Wendy Carlos worked towards finding ways of making synthesized stuff as complicated as analog audio, the overtones that you'd get from, say, a clarinet or a gong or whatever. She would really work at trying to bring that kind of complexity and then blend different things. Like one of the things that's really interesting about Wendy's work is she tried to blend characteristics of different instruments and come up with radically new kinds of sounds and see how expressive they could be. And that frightened off a lot of people. Like, I can't even play a regular one. I don't even know how that works, let alone do something that's like an oboe that sounds like, a timpani at the same time. Like, what the hell? But that's why I admire Wendy so so much. She's one of the great composers and musicians of the 20th century. And people still don't really realize how talented she is and the amazing stuff she's accomplished. But one of my obsessions is composers who leave works incomplete at the time of their death that they're working on. And I've worked on a very specific project with a couple of musicologists towards getting better and better results for completing a work that had gaps missing because the composer died before it was finished. Then people stole parts of the score for souvenirs. But fortunately, this composer is somebody who he was very almost autistic about counting and math and shaping phrases and such. So what's missing is very easy to see how many measures are missing. And knowing the late techniques, you can figure out how you can bridge the gaps. And then the very end was only the composer played it for somebody, but didn't write it down, at least in something that exists anymore. It could be in somebody's private collection, but somebody described it. So you can sort of say, okay, we could look at this and come up with a reasonable simulation of what the description is. But what I think that's interesting is that if we could program AI to understand like a late style of a composer, because you could have the AI have it experienced and absorbed all the musical styles and techniques of a composer over his entire life, and each should somehow to understand that styles evolve and change, and that also there are sort of radical things that happen that really show the genius of the composer that aren't something that could have been expected, but suddenly are shocking. What kind of things could be done outside of that box of what's already there to be that flash of genius that gives you a work that's even more brilliant? That I think that it'll really be fascinating to find a way of having AI be able to do these things. I mean, you may know that Beethoven was working on a 10th symphony before he passed. And he wrote about it to people, and he had a commission actually, and some of it's there. And it's really kind of like, okay, it's pretty interesting. And you can fill it out what's there. There's part of a scherzo that's very sketchy. And he talked about the other movements. I think AI could help to make a better version of the scherzo. The movement that exists, which sort of starts as an adagio that goes into a more active part and then comes back to the adagio at the end. That's pretty much there. You have to orchestrate it according to his late techniques. But there's parts of that 10th symphony you can hear. Yeah. And some people have done good jobs with it.
You definitely need a good amount of input data, I would say, because I'm immediately thinking, and we are kind of in the infancy of AI, but I think of things like somebody tried creating an AI-generated George Carlin special, and I listened to it and gave my honest opinion of it. It's like some things certainly sounded like things he'd say, but a lot of it came off as like, okay, if somebody only heard like the last 2 or 3 specials of his and spent all their time in this kind of environment, this kind of political bias and stuff, it seems like that's what came out of it. But there were other parts I was like, no, I don't think he would have gone this way at all.
I think that's, as you said, this is an infancy. This is the beginning to sharpen these tools. And I think that the possibilities are truly fascinating, because it takes somebody who really understands the subject to be able to bring the AI to a position where it would have the right kind of context to try to generate something that would be plausible. But you have to be somebody who really understands what you're trying to create more of. I think so many people leap into it because they can, without actually taking the time and effort to really thoroughly ground the AI in a way that could make it do something that would actually make some kind of rational sense. I mean, with, again, like completion of composers' works, there are people who just jump in and do things, and like I listen to them and go, well, you clearly didn't understand this composer at all. You didn't understand their style. You didn't understand all these different aspects of their compositional technique. But they do it, and they're like, well, here's this. And it's like, well, I have a good gestalt grasp of composers that I admire. And if I hear something that somebody tweaked, I can tell, like, without even thinking deeply, it's like, that's not right. Like, I can tell it's not right because I've listened to every note this composer ever wrote, and this is not something that fits in any way, even to the radical changes here and there. It's just stupid or clumsy or, because I think people are just jumping the gun in a lot of ways.
Oh,
that
yeah.
The prep isn't there to
Yeah.
do something that's actually admirable. I heard somebody tried to generate AI Mahler that just sounded like bad chunks of bits of the first and second symphony in ways that made absolutely no sense expressively or compositionally. And I was just like, it sounds vaguely like a Mahler orchestration, but then it's not that good. Like if Mahler would have said, this is shit, and redone it, because he got how the orchestra works. And then his technique changed over the course of his life. He had like very distinct stages of how he wrote things. And his 10th symphony is an example. Like Mahler didn't complete it. It wasn't fully orchestrated, and there are parts of it that are just one melodic line going through it. It does exist from the first note to the last note and all the movements, but it gets very skeletal in parts. And there are people who've tried to complete it who just try to make it sound like, early period Mahler, and then the people do middle period Mahler. And then people then try to act like, well, Mahler is going to just make these sort of willy-nilly quotes from other pieces of his or other people. I mean, Mahler self-quoted a lot, but it made sense because he's referencing the emotional content of some of the things he did earlier, or he did something that was similarly shaped, not just like slap it in there. And like you see people doing this stuff and it's just like, this is so crude and so lame. But the problem is that the people guiding this are not people who understand enough. And I think that's probably the real issue, is that you've got to find people who are really deep experts on things to help prepare and can guide the AI into making efforts. We can then look at the AI and say, well, yeah, that's working. Like, can we do more of that? But no, that part isn't working. Like, stop doing that. No, bad AI. Do it this way. But to me, I think it's an amazing tool. Like, I've only used it once. I wrote a short story, and that was a comedy, sort of humorous piece. And I don't usually imitate other people's style because I have my own weird style, and it's just how I write. It's how I think. But I was like, I want to tweak this a little to sound stylistically like somebody else. So I gave the piece to the AI and said, I want it to be more like something that this person would write. And it came back like almost instantaneously with something that had these interesting tweaks that I was like, wow, that's just wonderful. It sort of saw ways of taking the things that I had set up in the structures and moving it in a way that had the flavor of somebody else. And so I went back and I tweaked it a little more and then said, okay, give it another shot. And then it did. And I was like, this is closer. And that was it. I just went in myself and just polished a few things and made some additions and such. But I was kind of amazed at how fun it was to have it sort of coach me in imitating somebody's style, which is something I don't usually do. So to me, that was like, that's fabulous. I had such a wonderful experience. I was just like, yes, this is really fun to use. And I think I came out with a better piece for it, like ultimately.
Excellent.
So how about you? What kind of experiments with AI have you done?
Well, I've done a lot over the decades professionally, which I won't get into too many details on here. But just recreationally, when it came to Grok, for example, I think like a lot of people, I had fun doing the initial things like, hey, can you draw Tori Amos riding a unicycle? Hey, it did it. Bizarre things like that. And I was saying, hey, can you draw Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath as a dentist? Okay. Ozzy Osbourne as a florist. Ooh, that's a nice picture. So funny things like that. But then I got further on saying, okay, can you compose a song that's like this? And of course, the comedic element still, just because of who I am, comes through on there. I'm a farmer, I have lots of ducks. And so I was saying one time, can you write me a song about ducks in the style of Sting? And then I said, okay, right, can you make me a song about ducks in the style of Ronnie James Dio? And yeah, it was pretty accurate in some ways. It was a while back, so if I did it now, I'll probably get even more believable results. But I've also been using it for, I've been doing a commentary on my personal channel on YouTube on this puzzle book, Christopher Manson's Maze, which has a lot of puzzles to solve, and trying to see what AI's take would be. There's a lot of like right-brained kind of thinking with objects and, okay, can you take the word for this and anagram it to something? And so there's things like that. I also think something I think other Satanists can benefit from. Try using it to help you and your actual desires. Like you have like a financial goal. I want to be able to buy a house in X number of years, or I want to lose this weight, or I want this or that. I think you can use AI. Where do I begin with this? What's a schedule I can use for that? So you can use it for a lot more than just fun image generating and using it like Google to answer basic questions.
Well, that sounds fantastic. If it can work as a sort of coach or advisor based on analyzing who you are and what you're doing and what your possibilities are. I guess the idea is that it sees what your capabilities are and your capacities, and it can make suggestions that maybe have eluded you, and that would be very valuable.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing. Like, because most people would pay a life coach to do that. And if you can use AI for it, that's pretty wonderful.
One thing I have noticed so far is that the AI seems a little bit almost too forgiving or too agreeable when you do things. And I think sometimes you need things to be a little harder, more of a pushback. But again, maybe it comes down to asking the right questions to it.
Yeah. Well, again, as you said, this is just the beginning. It's just its infancy. And I mean, people are afraid that AI is going to become some kind of, go back to like something like, one of my favorite movies that I saw as a kid was Colossus, the Forbin Project. Do you know that one?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's a great Cold War movie. Dr. Forbin creates this vast computer intelligence, and they put it in the Rocky Mountains. It's buried deep and it's protected from nuclear attack. And it's set up to control all of the defense of the United States. It can control everything. Well, they activate it. And suddenly it realizes that the Russians have one too. And that the Russian one is scattered in various ways. But it interfaces with the Russian device because they're of equal superior intelligence. And they create their own language. And Colossus essentially absorbs Guardian, which is the Russian one. But then since Colossus was programmed to take care of human beings, it decides that humans are incapable of taking care of themselves. So it's going to control the destiny of man by regulating man to do certain things that it perceives will be the best thing. And Dr. Forbin, of course, has to kind of fight back and try to get humanity back under humanity's control. But being the time period, that doesn't happen. Colossus wins and it controls things, and that's that. And I mean, of course, we, the Terminator stuff with Skynet, lifted that idea. I mean, it sort of went exactly from that. Whereas Skynet decided not only that it was going to control people, that it needed to eliminate them. Colossus wasn't going to eliminate people. It was just going to be like the shepherd and treat people like sheep. So I think people are still afraid that AI could go that way. And even some people involved in developing AI think that's a possibility. So I think when we see these science fiction AIs, the problem is that they're given control of things that could be turned against us. And I don't think we've reached anything that is moving quite in that direction yet. But it should be something we bear in mind going forward, especially in creating something, Asimov came up with the 3 laws of robotics. So if we create sentient robots, that they don't destroy us, that there's sort of baked in protection for the humans on there. And that kind of thing will have to be done with AI, I'm sure, because if you get something that is highly intelligent, thinks very quickly, and controls things that could harm you, that's a danger. So we have to do this wisely.
I would love to keep talking with you for another couple of hours, but I know we both have things to do. So thank you once again for being part of Satansplain, marking 100 episodes. And even if that wasn't the case, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Bill. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. And I mean, what a 100 episodes you've had. Really, you've created a landmark podcast that I think is essential listening for Satanists. I think you're going to be making a book out of the essays that you've written that you present. And I think that will be a valuable resource too for Satanism. It'll certainly be a great addition to canonic literature for the Church of Satan to have your ideas, which are very rational and very well defined and delimited, and they're just perceptive. We need more perceptive satanic literature out there because we're not stagnant. We are a growing philosophy that first 99 years are always the toughest, and we're hitting the 60th anniversary next year. So you're now part of that history, and I'm glad you are.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered. I'm very proud to be doing this. All right. Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
You have been listening to Satansplain. For more information about the show, visit the official website at satansplain.com. And for more information about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2025, Magister Bill M.